welcome. Tonight, you're invited to drift back in time. Not to the palaces or the great legends of history, but to something quieter, slower, and far more ordinary. We're going to ancient Mesopotamia, where the rivers Tigris and Euphrates shaped some of the very first cities known to humankind. This was the cradle of civilization. But for those who lived it, it wasn't always so glorious. This journey won't follow heroes or gods, at least, not yet. We'll walk the clay-packed alleyways with worn sandals. We'll carry the weight of sun-dried bricks on sore backs and whisper past temple courts where incense lingers in the dusk. Over the next while, we'll explore what it truly meant to live in this ancient world. The rhythm of daily toil. The stories behind stone and tablet. Forgotten libraries of magic and law. And the strange sacred lives of priest kings and towering ziggurats. So settle in. Let your thoughts drift as we begin. Quietly where history really happened. On the ground beneath the Mesopotamian sun. Imagine waking to the soft but insistent glow of a low-hanging sun. The sky is already beginning to bake. The scent of damp earth and ash lingers in the air, clinging to the woven fibers of your reed mat. Your home is little more than a clay-plastered rectangle. Inside, it is still dark, still cool, but already the heat presses in. You rise without ceremony. There's no time for lingering dreams. You are a laborer in Sumer, one of the earliest urban societies the world has known. The city is alive before it is fully awake. Livestock stirring, feet thudding lightly on packed ground, voices low and clipped. You begin your day with a ration, barley bread rough in texture and dry on the tongue, and a jug of fermented barley drink, thick, sour, and just alcoholic enough to dull the coming heat. Work begins early, always early. And today, like most days, you haul bricks. Your bricks are molded by hand, shaped from river mud, straw, and silt, and left to harden in the brutal sun. They are light when wet, heavy when dry, and always scratch your palms. You stack them for hours along the rising walls of a temple foundation, or perhaps a merchant's house, or a flood-damaged canal that needs urgent repair. The city needs bricks like a body needs bones, but you are the muscle. Unseen, replaceable, tired. The overseer, usually a temple official, marks your work with a carved token. You're not paid in coin, but in barley, onions, and beer. Sometimes meat if the temple is generous. The system is ancient, older even than the wheel, but it is precise. There are no weekends, no holidays without permission. And if you anger the temple, you may find your rations reduced, or your family's name missing from the next allocation list. The sun arcs higher. You sweat through your linen wrap, and your bare feet slip in the mud. Flies circle lazily. Still, the work does not pause. In the background, the ziggurat looms, stepped tower, sacred and untouchable. Now from its heights, the priests and priestesses oversee rituals and read omens in the smoke. They speak to the gods, speak to dust. As the day closes, you return home. Your body aches, your hands are coarse. You eat, in silence, sunions, beer, more barley. If you are lucky, your children are well. If you are unlucky, the gods are not listening tonight. But the rhythm continues. The rhythm always continues. This is Sumer, and you are one of its many hands. Now let us leave the dust and toil behind for a time and step into the shaded corridors of legend. Not all figures in history are fully real, and not all myths are entirely false. Tonight we visit Gilgamesh. You may know him from the epic tale of grief, gods, and the search for immortality. But behind the story is a man flesh and bone who once ruled the city of Uruk more than 4,000 years ago. Uruk, a place of whitewashed walls and bustling markets, of temple complexes and high-status tombs. By the 3rd millennium BCE, it was a beacon of Sumerian civilization. And at its center, Gilgamesh, king of 5 cities, said to be 2/3 divine. The scribes who wrote his legend likely knew the truth of him, perhaps even walked the same halls. He was a Lugala king, but, unlike later monarchs, his rule was not absolute. He worked through assemblies, advisors, priests, and laws etched into clay. His city had bureaucracy, and bureaucracy, even then, had a way of softening the edges of ambition. But Gilgamesh's legacy was not built on policy. It was built in temples, in walls, in war. He is credited with great construction projects, city defenses, and canal works. Such labor required not just vision, but control. Over workers, over food stores, over neighboring settlements.
Ow.
This was a man who balanced piety with power, though how gently we do not know. Later inscriptions speak of a ruler with divine lineage and unparalleled strength. But they also speak of rebellion, of discontent, possibly of vengeance. He may have ruled for 126 years or 6. The records are not precise, but somewhere, buried beneath the sands of time, is his tomb. A royal grave, perhaps sealed beneath the Euphrates itself, its precise location still lost. Over time, the real man faded into poetry. The Epic of Gilgamesh, preserved on cuneiform tablets, recast him as a seeker of meaning. No longer a mere king, but a figure haunted by mortality, broken by the death of his friend Enkidu, yearning for the secret of eternal life. And in that way, he did become immortal, not in the way he desired, but through story, through clay and symbol. Tonight, the man and the myth lie beside one another, half remembered. The king who once strode through Uruk's great gates, and the hero who wandered the edges of the world. Let's leave his story now, and shift our gaze north, to a different kind of immortality, one written not in legend, but in lost libraries, buried for centuries in crumbling palaces. Now, the Mesopotamian sun has dipped below the horizon. The air cools, and the flicker of oil lamps begins to dance along palace walls. We move north and forward in time, hundreds of years beyond the age of Sumer to the mighty Assyrian Empire, and to the city of Nineveh, where a very different kind of monument once stood. Not a temple, not a ziggurat, but a library. The library of Ashurbanipal, named for the last great king of Assyria, was one of the ancient world's most remarkable efforts to capture knowledge. Clay tablets, thousands of them, stacked and catalogued with care, filled room after room in the royal palace. Ashurbanipal ruled in the 7th century BCE, and though he is remembered as a conqueror, he was also deeply curious. Unusually for a king of his time, he claimed to read and write Sumerian and Akkadian. He did not merely collect these tablets, he understood them. Imagine the quiet of these rooms. The dry rustle of styluses on damp clay, the scent of aging dust. Here were texts on astronomy, mathematics, healing, omens, rituals. Curses, too, and incantations whispered to gods long faded from memory. One tablet reads, calmly, "He who removes this tablet without permission shall have Nabu pluck out his name and destroy his seed." A gentle reminder to leave the archive as you found it. The library was no idle curiosity. It was a reflection of Ashurbanipal's belief that power lay not only in armies, but in knowledge, especially knowledge of the divine. The Assyrians believed that understanding portents, dreams, and patterns in the stars could influence the fate of kings and kingdoms. There were medical texts, too, listing treatments for everything from headaches to infertility. Many remedies combined plant extracts with prayer. Others were more mysterious: black bile, crushed insects, or murmured invocations to Lamashtu, a demoness blamed for illness and miscarriage. And in the dusty corners, there were stories, epic tales from centuries past. Among them, a copy of the Epic of Gilgamesh, carefully etched into clay. The very same story you heard earlier, preserved like a fossil in fire-hardened script. But this library, like so many in history, did not survive intact. When Nineveh fell in 612 BCE, it was burned. Yet that destruction preserved the clay tablets, baking them solid and hiding them beneath rubble for over 2,000 years. It wasn't until the 19th century that archaeologists uncovered them. It's buried in silence beneath what is now modern-day Iraq. The library is no longer whole. Many tablets remain missing. Some were looted, others destroyed. But the fragments that remain offer glimpses into minds long-gone priests, scribes, physicians, astronomers quietly recording the shape of their world. So as you drift now through the dim vaults of memory, imagine them there. Not warriors, not kings, but men and women hunched over clay, trying to understand the stars, trying to leave something behind that would last. And now, for our final passage tonight, we turn back again toward the high terraces of the ziggurat, and the strange, sacred lives of those who ruled from its heights. Now the sky is dark. The wind moves gently across the rooftops, and torches flicker at the city gates. It is nighttime in ancient Mesopotamia, and the upper levels of society begin their sacred routines. Tonight we climb, slowly, toward the top of the ziggurat. These great stepped towers, part temple, part observatory, part cosmic bridge, dominated the skyline of cities like your Uruk and Eridu. They were made not for the people, but for the gods and the priests who served them, and sometimes the kings who believed themselves God's chosen. In the Mesopotamian world, religion and rule were inseparable. The ensi, or city ruler, was often both king and high priest, a figure of administrative power and sacred duty. His days were divided between law and liturgy, between court rulings and grain offerings. His world was measured in omens, rituals, incantations read from the liver of sacrificed animals, or the pattern of smoke as it rose from burnt cedar wood. These were not superstition, but the machinery of state. The gods' favor was currency, their silence a threat. The ziggurat was the stage for this cosmic negotiation. At its base, priests bathed statues, dressed them in linen robes, and offered incense in silver bowls. These gods made of wood and metal were treated like royalty. Fed twice a day, sung to at dawn, lulled to sleep at dusk. On higher terraces, more secret rituals unfolded, ones that only the senior clergy or royal family witnessed. Here, under open sky, the priest-king might spend the night in ritual seclusion, fasting, reading omens, or invoking blessings on the city below. One of the most mysterious rites was the sacred marriage ceremony held annually. In it, the king would symbolically marry the high priestess, representing the union of the god Dumuzi and the goddess Inanna. The ritual was meant to ensure the fertility of the land and reinforce the king's divine mandate. Whether these unions were literal or symbolic remains uncertain. But the ritual, layered in music, perfume, offerings, and poetry, was central to the rhythms of elite life. Even outside the temple, the elite lived very differently from the common laborer. Their homes were larger, often surrounding private courtyards. They had access to literacy, scribes, and trade goods from across the ancient world: lapis from Afghanistan, cedar from Lebanon, gold from Anatolia. But with privilege came burden. Every decision had cosmic weight. Every illness could signal divine displeasure. And a failed harvest, a flood, or a bad omen could cost a priest, king, his favor or his life. So even in luxury, they lived in the shadow of something larger: the gods, the ancestors, the cycle of fate. Now, as the temple lamps burn low and the sacred chants fade into the warm night air, we return from the ziggurat's heights. The sacred has been observed, the cycle repeated, and tomorrow it begins again. And now the oil lamps are out. The bricks of Uruk and Nineveh lie silent, buried beneath millennia of soil and sand. The workers have stopped their toil. The kings have left their thrones. Even the gods are quiet. In ancient Mesopotamia, life moved slowly, but it moved with rhythm. From the rise of the sun over the Tigris to the long shadows cast by the ziggurat at dusk, every breath of daily life, whether in sweat-soaked labor, in whispered ritual, or in silent study, was part of a larger pattern. It was a civilization of firsts: the first writing, the first law codes, the first empires. But it was also a world of constant struggle, for food, for meaning, for the favor of invisible forces. And now we remember them: the Sumerian laborer, ankle-deep in mud, counting onions and sipping his bitter beer; the king Gilgamesh, heavy with grief, seeking a way to live forever; the Assyrian scholar, bent over clay, recording the phases of Venus; the priest-king, eyes lifted to the stars, wondering what the next omen would bring. They are long gone now, but their traces remain in tablets, in ruins, in stories whispered across centuries. So as you lie here now, breathing softly, safe in your present moment, you might reflect on that fragile link between then and now, between the dust of clay and the dreams we still dream. Sleep well.